Howdy, folks. Welcome back to another episode of Bjorn's Mighty Thoughts. And today I am thinking about a trailer I just seen recently for Swamp Thing. Apparently, this is a new television series coming to the DC Universe streaming channel app. Not fully aware of it yet. I'm gonna want to look more into it, obviously. But the trailer had me very intrigued. This is the second trailer I've seen. The first trailer couldn't really get much out of it, but I will post links to both trailers in the video description that I seen. Um, and the second trailer gave me a lot more of an opinion and a feel of how I think the new Swamp Thing series will be, or at least how I hope it will be. As actually a fan of Swamp Thing myself, I'll get more into depth with that. Um, but yeah, so we're going to begin a bit. We're going to focus on talk. I'm going to talk a little bit about the history of Swamp Thing here, quick. Um, I do have to point out that the trailer made Swamp Thing, the new series, look less superhero and more horror, which I find very intriguing. Um, and I'll proceed with that also. So Swamp Thing was actually originally created by Len Wein. He also was known for creating Wolverine and a couple other Marvel superheroes. I believe he also created Nightcrawler and Colossus and Storm. Could be mistaken on Storm. He was writer for Swamp Thing, also editor for Swamp Thing, the Saga of Swamp Thing, which I'll get into in a bit also. He is also did writing for X-Men, Wolverine, The Human Target, and he was also known for his works on Justice League. He's kind of bounced back and forth between Marvel and DC over the years, as most writers of his time period really did. Jack Kirby, for instance, he kind of bounced back and forth between Marvel and DC, and everybody knows Jack Kirby is the king. Um, Len Wein would actually start with Swamp Thing, um, with the first appearance in House of Secrets, number 92, in July of 1971. So Swamp Thing is actually quite an old character. Um, Not like the oldest, it's not like Superman or anything like that, but he is definitely not a newer character, although he has been reinvented multiple times. Um, and later he would return. Swamp Thing would return to comic pages with Swamp Thing number one in 1974. That was also written by Len Wein. Now I want you to understand that the House of Secrets appearance was actually a one-off deal. It was a one-off horror comic. It was never actually supposed to proceed any further, but this was actually a time when comic businesses actually listened to the fans. The fans actually really enjoyed House of Secrets number 92, and they were hoping to see more of Swamp Thing from that. Uh, uh, Len would work with Thanes more, and Swamp Thing would finally return in 1974. However, that would not be the end of Swamp Thing. Now, the series was popular for a while, but it kind of dropped off, and it would be reintroduced after actually two successful, well, one very successful movie, one not necessarily so successful. Uh, he would actually first appear in film in the first movie titled Swamp Thing. It was directed by Wes Craven, known horror director, and the movie was in 1982. Now, following, you can see the suit definitely improved. The other photo is actually from the Return of Swamp Thing in 1989. Now, in the process of these two films, uh, there would also be a reboot of the whole series, which started with the Saga of Swamp Thing. And we're going to talk a little bit about the Saga of Swamp Thing because this is actually, I hope, where the direction is going to go. This is actually what's on my mind. Um, Now, Len would actually start writing Saga of Swamp Thing at first. However, due to other duties he had with his role of editor and other things, he would actually get the known writer Alan Moore. He's known for his works for obviously V for Vendetta and the Watchmen, which everybody points out. He probably actually should be even more known for his work on actually 2000 AD and Judge Dredd. Um, that was like his big that's pretty much what got him in the business. He also did League of Extraordinary Gentlemen, and he also did a lot of other writing. He's actually still an independent writer today. Um, he's actually totally against writing for companies, which I can see why, considering the screw over job he got from The Watchmen. But however, he's made a lot of money over the years. He is a very successful writer. He's a known writer, especially within the comic world. And I would definitely say outside the comic world now, considering uh, the film The Watchmen, um, V for Vendetta, Leave Extraordinary Gentleman was done into a film, although the film was very loosely based on his novel. Um, but so this would actually be Saga of Swamp Thing would be in between um, the first movie and the second movie, and it was actually DC's push to get Swamp Thing back in the comic books to get people focused on Swamp Thing due to the success of the film, the first film in 1982. Um, there's a lot of intriguing parts in here. The Once again, it was, even though it was at a time frame where superheroes were actually really popular in comics, horror comics not so popular. Alan Moore actually wrote the Saga of Swamp Thing as a horror, which was very intriguing for the time. It made a very interesting story. I actually have the 6 books for the series. Not talking comic books, the actual the collection books. Um, if you didn't read any of them, I suggest you at least read the book one. But there was a lot of interesting things that were done in the Saga of Swamp Thing. First off, the thing I found most intriguing was is um, even growing up as a kid with what I knew of Swamp Thing, I always thought Swamp Thing was Alec Holland, and Alan Moore actually wrote it up that Alec Holland actually died, was actually murdered, which you'd have to follow up more with that. Um, that Swamp Thing was actually just the conscience of Alec Holland. And I thought that was very interesting. But also, uh, Saga of Swamp Thing would also give us the first appearance of this character, also known as John Constantine. I'm also a bit of a John Constantine fan. Um, and this is another character. I wouldn't say he's as well known even as Swamp Thing, even though I wouldn't consider Swamp Thing as the most known outside of the comic book realm. Um, but obviously, there was the Constantine film, and then there was the Constantine the television series, which I would, if you haven't seen that, I would suggest you watch that. It was also it was very well done series. Um, and then in 1990, they would actually bring back. I forgot to mention this. They would actually bring back Dick Durock, also Richard Durock, as Swamp Thing. He also starred as Swamp Thing in the 1982 film and in the 1989 Return of Swamp Thing. And he would star alongside Mark Chapman, as Mark Chapman would star as Dr. Arcane. That's the photo on the left is Dr. Arcane. Um, the suit was much improved, I felt, between movie one, movie two, and then finally the series. The series obviously having the best suit. The series actually ran for 3 seasons, and it ran for a total of 72 episodes. Now, what I will point out here is The series in 1990, it kind of had that horror tone to it, but it wasn't really quite horror. It was just kind of Swamp Thing to Swamp Thing. That's the best way to put it. And there's a lot of misconceptions too that he's a superhero or he's an anti-hero. I would put it as Swamp Thing to Swamp Thing. He's a force of nature. He's not I don't think he's a hero, nor is he's a villain, and I don't think he's necessarily an anti-hero either. Um, the show though, the 1990 series, it's dated now, but if you're into that kind of thing and you're gonna watch the series, maybe see if you can't get you know get a few of some of the old episodes. Get a watch a couple of the old episodes, see what it was like. The series wasn't bad. It was interesting. Um, but so the new series, as I said, it looks like it's going to have a harsh horror type tone to it, which I really like that idea. I hope that's actually the direction they go with it. As I point out, fan of Alan Moore's work, and it was his work was horror. So I really hope to see that, and obviously I point out Dr. Arcane there a bit because I would expect to also see Dr. Arcane in the new series. Uh, the CGI for Swamp Thing looks pretty interesting. I honestly think, actually, Swamp Thing from the actual series from 1990 series, I think actually looks a little bit better than the new CGI Swamp Thing. However, with that pointing that out, there's a lot of things they'll be able to do with the CGI, and the CGI still doesn't look bad. Um, Now, I want to point out something I'd like to see, and there's a reason why I talked about Constantine earlier, is I hope to see Matt Ryan in the series reprising his role as Constantine. Even if it's just a cameo appearance, just as a nod off to Alan Moore's work, especially if they kind of gear it towards Alan Moore's work, which as I said, I hope they do. I can't see that enough. That's like on my mind is like I hope to see Alan Moore's work on the screen. I hope they do a really good job uh, trying to put Swamp Thing on the screen. We'll see how it works out. It'll be interesting to see, none the least, especially because there's been so many iterations of Swamp Thing over the years. More modernly, I would say he's kind of like a dark hero, anti-hero type character. Um, and I think they should actually try to, if they can do it, they should try to avoid him from looking like a superhero and just looking like a force of nature. But anyway, folks, I hope you enjoyed the video and hearing my opinion of what how I feel about it. Like I said, it looks interesting. Um, but anyway, folks, hopefully you enjoyed it, and thank you for watching.